of Johannesburg experienced devastating flash floods on Wednesday that claimed 6 lives. A 3-year-old girl remains missing in Alexandra. Property and infrastructure has been damaged. Cars have been washed away, and close to 200 families have lost their homes in Setwetla, Alexandra, which has been the worst affected area. In situations like this, generally the poorest of residents are most affected. The executive mayor of Johannesburg, Herman Mashaba, says this is something that has to be addressed during his term of office. He has also reassured residents that his office is doing everything possible to assist communities and to ensure that those affected are given emergency assistance.
Dog! It's a joker!
Las recientes lluvias han provocado daños a la agricultura, carreteras, puentes, casas, así como el desplazamiento de miles de familias, dejando pérdidas por más de 6.000 millones de pesos, según informó la vicepresidenta de la República, Margarita Cedeño de Fernández. Señaló que el presidente Danilo Medina encabeza personalmente los operativos e imparte instrucciones a las instituciones gubernamentales tendentes a salvar vidas, rehabilitar caminos y carreteras, remover escombros y brindar refugio a los afectados. Dijo que el Ministerio de Obras Públicas mantiene más de 400 hombres y 150...
Ay, la pobre Matilde, Dios mío, gran poder de Dios, y esta gente, a eso le está metiendo también.
Tonight, folks who live near the Georgia-North Carolina border are being urged to wear protective masks when they're outdoors. There is a thick haze in the south from 31 large fires. Mark Strassman is on the fire line.
This is one flank of one wildfire, the Rock Mountain Fire, 5 miles into the woods of North Georgia. 3 major wildfires in this state have already burned 25,000 acres.
Copy. I'll try to work on getting them turned around here.
Chad Cullum supervises 20 firefighters from Montana. If flames jump this road, Cullum's team knows this wildfire will plunge into a new wilderness.
Then you just get a little wind shift or a change in temperature, and the fire behavior just responds accordingly, and it can escalate very quickly.
You're working against a drought, low humidity, and lots of leaves, which become light fuel.
We have to establish our line and then pretty much clean it every day as the new leaves continue to fall.
From space, you can see smoke from fires burning in 7 states, burning more than 100,000 acres. 5,000 firefighters, many with more expertise from western states, are working round the clock. Near Lake Lure, North Carolina, the Party Rock fire has charred more than 4,500 acres and frightened evacuees like Teresa Wheeler.
You just don't know what you're going to come or what you're going to hear next or come home to. You know, you fear that you're going to lose everything you have.
One of the goals is to prevent this wildfire from spreading deeper into the wilderness and into North Carolina. What would help is rain. But meteorologists working with these firefighters say there is no significant rain in the forecast until Christmas. Scott?
Mark Strassman, thanks.
Dry weather and drought conditions across the South are fueling an explosion of wildfires. Thousands of acres have burned now, and heavy smoke is raising air quality concerns. Dozens of fires are still burning in North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and other states. Mark Strassman is in the northern Georgia town of Clayton right now. Mark, good morning.
Good morning. All this charring comes from the Rock Mountain Fire, which has burned more than 5,000 acres and is only 10% contained. And the smoke here is so thick, residents are being urged to wear air masks like these whenever they go outside.
More than 70 wildfires stretch across 8 southern states. Those fires have already charred more than 100,000 acres and forced evacuations.
Oh, I'm concerned. It was up there at the top of the ridge and now it's down to here. It's unnerving. It's scary. It's terrifying.
In North Carolina, flames are threatening at least 1,700 structures.
We have California wildfires in North Carolina.
More than 20 wildfires are burning in North Carolina, many of them investigated for suspected arson.
The way this fire is, it is totally different. This is the worst thing I've ever been involved in.
From the flames, massive plumes of smoke. So much that dozens of counties are facing air quality advisories. A view from NASA shows the extent of the smoke. Some of it has started to drift into the metro Atlanta area.
I have twins with asthma, 12-year-old twins, and being outside with them, I'd noticed them coughing.
Making it especially difficult for firefighters, dry conditions and severe drought that plague much of the region. Nearly 40% of the Southeast is facing drought, including 3/4 of Alabama and half the state of Georgia.
I've got faith that they're going to get it out and that we're going to be okay.
Another sense of the challenge here. There are 5,000 firefighters on the ground from as far away as Colorado and California. And in this continuing drought, there is no rain in the forecast. Nora?
Oh, that is tough. Mark, thank you so much.
In Morocco today, nearly 200 countries reaffirmed their support for the global climate agreement reached in Paris last year. Many are worried President-elect Trump will pull out of the deal. Further south in Africa, climate change is taking a toll on endangered mountain gorillas. Mark Phillips has more in his ongoing series, The Climate Diaries.
There's a population up there on the slopes of these volcanic peaks in Central Africa that knows nothing of arguments in Washington about climate change. But the famous gorillas in the mist do know something is going on. They know the bamboo shoots that make up a major part of their diet and which used to sprout like clockwork are now less predictable. The rains that produced them were a month late this year. The gorillas have had to adapt their roaming and foraging patterns because the old seasonal rhythms of food production have altered. Their world is changing.
These guys are the 800-pound gorillas in the room, except, of course, they really weigh in at about 400 pounds. And they're not in control of events, they're the potential victims of them.
The gorillas' problems are made worse by the troubles of their distant cousins and close neighbors, people. Because the late rains have also made the water supply down in the valleys less reliable, local villagers have been going up into gorilla country, where they're not supposed to go, to bring that good mountain water home. And park ranger Abu Musana says water isn't the only thing the people are after.
When there is that kind of change when it's drought,
yes,
the
when there's
harvest,
a drought, yes,
drought, the harvest will be impacted,
yes,
and the people are coming to invade the habitat which is for gorillas.
So when the people are low on food, they come into the park looking for food.
The human population has ballooned in the area surrounding the park, and when these people are forced up the mountains, David Greer of the World Wildlife Fund's Great Apes program says they bring disease and other dangers with them.
They have to enter the park to get to access this clean water, and in the meantime, they might want to set a snare for catching an ungulate, for food.
It's an antelope or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That some poor ape steps into.
Exactly.
That's what happened to this gorilla filmed by a 60 Minutes team a few months ago. The snare was removed by one of the vets whose work has actually helped the ape population increase lately. Still, there are only about 880 mountain gorillas left in the world, all here, confined to these mountain tops. They're already considered critically endangered, and as their world changes, they have nowhere to go. Mark Phillips, CBS News, in Volcano National Park, Rwanda.
For thousands of years, it's been cold enough for glaciers to form here on top of the Rwenzori Mountains in Uganda, but not for much longer. Most of the Rwenzori glaciers have already melted. We spent a week walking up to see what's left, but there's no way we could have got here without the help of others. Like all the mountain guides, Moses Cassine is trained to haul himself and a tourist out of a deep crevasse using only an ice axe. Cutting footholds for us is easy for him. He's worried by the glaciers melting.
I'm traumatized as it is getting smaller, because at one end it will get off, and that means no more tourists coming on this mountain, and that means my job gonna go off.
The glaciers are in the Rwenzori Mountains National Park. Below them lies an extraordinary ecosystem, home to many unique species of plants and animals. Muhindo Matovu knows the park better than most. He was a poacher here for nearly 40 years before he was hired by a trekking company to find and create new footpaths.
The plants are changing, and much of the glacier has melted. It only remains on the high peaks. On the lower peaks, there's very little snow now.
And while the park is an ecological treasure trove, it's the glaciers that attract the most visitors, nearly 2,000 a year. And that provides jobs for hundreds of people from the local communities. Marion Bamboo says working as a porter for expeditions pays much better than her previous work as a market trader.
The job is really good for me because each time I do a trek in the mountains, I am able to pay school fees for my child, to buy food and other things for my family.
And now, because of carbon emissions, mostly from other continents, many of the jobs here are on the line. The guides who helped us up say as the glaciers melt, more cracks and crevasses appear. They seem to know all of them, and the value of their unique skills depends on the glaciers being here.
This is the Margarita Peak. It's the highest point in the Ruwenzori Mountains, and it's the third highest mountain in Africa, and it's cold and windy, and all around us are glaciers formed in all of the cracks and the valleys between the peaks. But scientists say the 0 degrees line above which glaciers can form is rising, and within a couple of decades the 0 degrees line will be higher than this summit.
That means all the snow and ice here will be gone, and with it, jobs. The disappearance of the Ruwenzori glaciers threatens not just the ecosystems around here, but livelihoods too. Malcolm Webb, Al Jazeera, at the Margarita Peak in Uganda.
The outcome of this year's UN climate talks were never going to rival the global agreement made last year in Paris, but it was hoped progress would be made in a few key areas. The Paris Climate Agreement laid down a broad, ambitious commitment for countries to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Exactly how they're going to do this and how it will be monitored is still to be decided, but delegates here did agree to work out these details by 2018. The election of Donald Trump, who has called climate change a hoax, as the next US president, has cast a shadow over these talks, but it didn't stop the US delegation from trying to push forward in the hope that they can lock in any gains before a change of administration.
The momentum is with us, it's underway. There are underlying market forces that will continue to push us in the right direction. And we heard very strong political resolve from China, from Europe, from Africa, from Latin America. So I think, if anything, there was a galvanizing effect.
47 countries, the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change, did commit to making their energy 100% renewable by 2050 and called on other countries to do the same.
The issue of climate aid and the willingness of rich countries to honour their promises when it comes to helping the poorest and most vulnerable was one area where little progress was made. Without these funds, most developing countries feel that once again their interests have been ignored.
The needs of the poorest and most vulnerable around the world are urgent and they're rising. But this COP, unfortunately, has failed to recognise that. It's failed to recognise that there's a massive gap in adaptation support, and really developed countries have been unwilling to agree anything that compels them to go beyond what they're already committed to.
The meeting is over for another year, but now nations must go away and get on with the job of reducing their carbon emissions. Fiji will preside over next year's event in the German city of Bonn. And it's there, with or without the support of the next US administration, the slow and complex negotiations will continue. Tarek Bazley, Al Jazeera, at the UN climate talks in Marrakesh, Morocco.
Sì, ma qua veramente c'è da fare qualcosa. Ma no, cosa succede? Ma qua veramente
Roads turned into raging rivers. Heavy rain and wind unleashing a torrent of torment.
Never seen water like this in my life.
Staley Bridge in Greater Manchester, just one of the many victims. Family homes inundated by flash flooding, fire crews inundated with calls for help. Storm Angus has laid yet more destruction in our paths. Rising waters overnight, leading sirens issuing warnings to those in West Yorkshire. People in Todmorden trying desperately to keep the deluge at bay. Even sheep in Devon were forced to find a bed on higher ground. The river in Exeter has burst its banks, the city hit by a month's rainfall in just 2 days. Travel chaos is being felt across the country. Thousands delayed, if not entirely cut off by flooded rail lines. Off the coast of Wales, more than 100 passengers and crew were stuck on their ferry through the night. The common thread to all of this? The tireless efforts of emergency services. But this is likely just the start of their work. There are still dozens of flood warnings around much of the UK. People being warned to take immediate action. And with months of wild winter weather still to come, it could be an uphill struggle.
A fallen tree and landslides caused by Hurricane Otto in Panama have claimed 3 lives. Costa Rica ordered the evacuation of 4,000 people from its Caribbean coast. Otto has been gaining strength in the Caribbean and can become the first hurricane to make a landfall in Costa Rica since 1851.
This is the town of Nataf, just outside of Jerusalem, and this is the area where firefighters are focusing their efforts now. This is where the fire remains out of control in the hills and the valleys around us. The fire swept through here earlier today. You can see this home behind me was damaged, as well as the home behind that. Scorched earth all along this hill here on the ground, burning the greenery and melting just about anything that's plastic, like what appears to be a pottery bowl right here behind me. The fire has then spread from this hill across the valley to the other hills, and that's because of the conditions here. It's supposed to be the rainy season, and yet we haven't seen rain in more than 2 weeks. It's dry. In addition to that, we've seen very windy conditions throughout the last couple of days, and those are expected to continue into the next couple of days. The dryness plus that wind is causing the fire to jump from one hill to another, and that is where firefighters are trying to stop the fire. We've seen a number, 4 or 5 at different times, of firefighting planes dumping chemical retardants on the fire, trying to stop it, and yet it still spreads. That is where firefighters are focusing their efforts now. This is in central Israel. In northern Israel, there's a town called Zichron Yaakov. That's where we've seen some 750 families that remain evacuated, 20 homes damaged because of the fire there. Firefighters have that fire under control, but have not completely put it out yet. As for what started these fires, at least for the fire in this case, that is to say the fire in Nataf, police are questioning 4 workers who were in the area. Police say they may have started a fire out of negligence. But as for exactly what started it, that will be the focus of the investigation after the fires are out. Oren Lieberman, CNN, Nataf.
Fueled by strong winds and dry weather, part of Haifa's skyline has been transformed by fire. The billowing smoke forcing the authorities to order tens of thousands of people to leave the city. Many homes have already been destroyed, with firefighters working to douse the flames to stop the fires spreading. Some houses, though, are beyond repair. The main highway between Israel's 3rd biggest city and Tel Aviv was closed for some time, while teams tried to put out the flames as they gained ground on residential areas. The wildfires have struck an area close to Jerusalem, with some property already lost to the blaze. Homes have also been damaged in part of the occupied West Bank. Israeli authorities have raised the possibility that the fires may have been started deliberately, arresting 4 Israeli Palestinians, but a judge released them soon afterwards, citing a lack of evidence.
At the moment, we're investigating how the fires began. We strongly believe that the fires could have been started by individuals who fled the scenes. There are a number of reports that we've received, and therefore, at the moment, we're continuing to both put out the flames, deal with the major situation which is taking place in and around the city of Haifa.
Tinder dry conditions and a lack of rain for several months in some areas have fueled the fires. Several nations have already offered assistance, sending help from the skies to try to put out the fires. More strong winds, though, are predicted in the coming days, making their job even harder. Emma Hayward, Al Jazeera.